or any of you.
I just remember I loved Meg, and I like. I got my water bottle. Oh my goodness. Let's get a job.
I don't think I ever read it, so I thought, oh, it's coming out, and then the movie truly was
I didn't
odd.
see it. Was
the
it?
movie was.
It did get great reviews.
The movie got horrible reviews. And it was odd. It was sort of like watching a Salvador Dali picture. It was strange.
I read every Sweet Valley High in 6th grade to make my mother angry.
You did what?
Sweet Valley High. 6th graders. Twiddly twins.
Oh.
Thought it was just trashy, and so I read every single one.
Love it, because they're so trashy.
She didn't think it was great literature.
Appropriate literature, yes.
I remember that. My mother wanted me to read books.
Okay, Jenny, this is the first time I've actually been early or on time.
What's the big deal?
Well, I didn't run into a traffic jam today.
I know,
leave on
and me
time
too.
every
Because
single
often there's a
time.
big accident coming
All
from.
the time.
So,
I get into a traffic jam. An accident's something every time I come down here. And today's the first day I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually here on time.
so my mom.
So we're terrible.
Davis.
Did you drive from the south?
No, the north.
Yeah.
And she drives farther than me.
From the south.
It was great coming here from the north too. So she must remember that area.
Yes, I did. Very much.
Anyway, but yeah, everyone was sharing their
And my detail today.
Yes, you are. I like it.
There's my story about you.
You just don't work a good job at it. No, you know what I mean.
I know you when you have to. That's why you kill yourself.
Well, we just finished negotiations. And when the negotiations.
Did you guys finish negotiations?
Are they there? Are you feeling so bad? I like to see.
I'm speaking at you.
Davis and we were there multiple. So this is really.
Down that far, yeah.
Not quite finished.
Well,
But
some actually
We're
have
doing.
it.
We're getting. I think we're going to ratify March, May 14th.
we're ratifying you.
College of Education for you.
Okay.
And I will be out of the country.
Where's
And
it
so
going?
John,
Oh,
to London and
Oh,
Ireland. Like,
this is supposed
yeah,
to
it'll be
yes.
fun.
Oh,
So,
okay.
We're sorry.
Yeah, very easy. And yeah, no, I was thinking everything. And John will be gone too, so everyone else. And then anyway, it is something.
Oh, good.
My sister's a teacher nurse. Oh my gosh, she's been texting me every day. Today they
You
went
know,
out.
they predict that you can see next time.
I know, right?
We work hard. If that gas tax is passed.
Yes, but I think you're supposed to flip.
Do you?
No, I don't know.
Oh, we
just how she's
Since
doing
we
it.
really.
People need to know more information.
Obstacles now.
That's right. Like,
I know.
And so if
but it's not all the way.
And I think we've got to be good about getting your
You're right.
message, what that is
That's
for.
good.
Otherwise, they just see it on there.
Back, so I know this.
That's your tutorial.
I know what
Because
it's.
gas is already getting higher.
I know, I am,
But you can.
I was more confident. I'm getting a little more worried.
This,
And then we're gonna change.
right here. This should, like, you
I
should
know,
hook it.
I know.
Well, much of.
That's what
Oh.
She's got a tutorial on for you.
You do?
Yes,
let's watch.
When I got my doctorate, I did not. I did not. Okay, here we go. I didn't walk when I got my doctorate, so I didn't do this.
The tail of the foot should drape down your back. The next part may require a friend's help.
He's nice.
Yeah, 19.
That's what it's good.
Oh, that's inside out. Pull the collar for show. Above the button. Straighten out
I know.
the foot from flat across your back.
It is.
Wrap the string around the button, pulling it across the head.
I know.
And there you go. You're done. You can use the string hanging from the V of the foot up to the front to wrap around a button inside your back.
Oh.
Safety pins are also great.
I did bring a safety pin.
And your gown will not have a button like this one.
I love that she says button. She's from Lakeland. She so is, yeah. You're good. Okay, yes, that was it. So it's just the top color. Yes.
Okay, I've been duly tutored. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's very.
Yeah, you two can do anything.
I know. Is this
Oh, do you need
No,
the?
I
got it.
That was that folded
part,
back.
yep.
And I will just tell you, I've got lots of handlers at the U. I've never seen anything like it. They have dropped off a parking pass. They've got a reserve spot.
You're wearing red.
I know, it's a good thing you're wearing red.
Yes.
Counting on you.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Appreciate you all. Have a good day today.
Oh,
You too.
we're proud of you, Sid.
I
Go
know.
News Brown.
The best part of the day is I get to go see all of the Edgeham speeches this morning, all the Edgeham performances.
Oh, yeah.
And they're kids from Whitehorse High and from Guadalupe. And
Oh,
from,
wow.
like, I'm gonna cry through the whole thing. I know I will. These are just like amazing kids that are doing.
I know. That's great. Have fun.
North Superior.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Enjoy it. Bye-bye. Wow.
You just tell her to step it up.
No, I said no.
Oh, I'm like, come on, I remember. I thought she said that to you. Oh, I know you wouldn't say. I was like, oh no. You guys, you come in, you girls need to step up.
Okay, I'm going to call us to order, and, oh, you know what, no,
We don't have enough.
we don't have a quorum.
Hey, Jen.
So let the minutes reflect that due to lack of the quorum, we did not start at 9 a.m. But we tried.
But let the minutes reflect that
Let the
Jennifer
minutes reflect
Gravitt
that
is
Janet
here
was
and
ready.
Janet King is here.
Yeah.
We do information items.
Oh, yeah, we could.
Okay, or, well, let's do welcome. Apparently we are here and it's going to be 70 degrees outside today and a beautiful weekend. So we have something great to look forward to. I'd like everyone in the room to introduce themselves, and so I'll start with the table and then we'll go around. So my name's Janet Cannon and I'm chairing the committee today.
Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent, Student Achievement.
Jennifer Gravitt, District 4, Weber and Davis County.
Sherry Reedman. Sorry. I support Patty.
Okay, we'll go
And
ahead.
I'm Cameron Daly from the internal audit staff, so I wanted to evaluate and help we can.
I'm Bridget Gerard from the Davis School District.
Yay.
Hi.
I'm Debbie Llewellyn with the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools.
Troy Nordic with Driver Education.
Good.
I feel like we have to be with everybody now.
Sarah Young with Digital Teaching and Learning.
I'm Allison Nicholson. I'm policy advisor on contract. Sarah Key, K-3 literacy specialist.
Jennifer Johnson, K-12 Literacy and Library.
Now,
Today.
Today!
I put it up there now.
Oh, Jennifer gets her doctorate degree.
Dr. Brown.
Dr. Bronson, we're proud of you. Congratulations. Okay, so we have an information item that I think we can go to. And Sarah, it's yours, 3.4, Digital Teaching and Learning. Good morning, dearie. Welcome.
Right.
Find the best place to sit. Find too many people. Make them uncomfortable. Somebody right on your back.
That's always your goal.
All right, so thank you so much. So Sarah Young, Coordinator for Digital Teaching and Learning. I'm here to present our quarterly report on the Digital Teaching and Learning Qualified Grant. We do this quarterly report for standards and assessment, and then it passes along to the State Board of Education at the request of it being a newer program, as well as a program where we wanted to make sure that as we continue to build and iterate, that you have an opportunity to hear what we're doing and give input. So within the Digital Teaching and Learning report, you'll see that we've been out in the field quite a bit, engaged with our LEAs and our different stakeholders. Really, the shift has been from early in the quarter, focusing in on on PLC work. So having some of our LEAs, both charters and districts, hosting site visits for others to be able to attend. And so those were very well attended. Yes?
Tell me what PLC work is.
Great. So a professional learning community is something that's probably more familiar in a school-based setting. So you working with teachers on your grade level team to share best practices, analyze data, and make informed decisions about next steps. We are taking that and implementing it now with our LEAs. So we put them into 8 different, actually they have self-selected into 8 different categories. Some of them focused on a content area, so how are we using digital teaching and learning in math, English language arts, and science. Also looking at strategies they're using, so those who are working with Canvas, as well as leveraging formative and summative assessment tools. And then those that are more around supports, such as professional coaches, teacher leaders, as well as kind of progress-based metrics. So yeah, and so they've been great about kind of sharing, here's where we are. It's a really honest opportunity for folks to see, like, not just what the strengths are, but what the challenges are as well. Those happened earlier in the quarter. The latter part has been focused on evaluation. So this is really kind of our first year of doing the reflection and feedback component. Digital teaching and learning is pretty different than most of our state programs in the fact that each of the LEAs have set their own goals, and we leverage the DTL dashboard to be able to then ask, how are you progressing towards your goals, not just in regards to achievement, but also implementation. So how far are you in terms of implementing your vision and your plan? So we've been working with our external evaluator Materi group in terms of supporting the LEAs with starting to engage with their evaluations within the dashboard setting, as well as providing their evidence of that component.
Yeah, and I had thought of a question about that. So you had a chart for us in the board docs, and it shows, you know, the timeline, and you're evaluating them and awarding them. And it seems like we're awarding them before we evaluate them.
So it's a 3-year grant program, right. And so from the 3-year component, they're going to be able to have, there is some overlap between the award letters because it's kind of part of the overall scope. In regards to the timeline, and I don't know, because I think, is that an action item? Can I talk about that one too? Or?
Well, I know it's an action item. I just,
okay.
When you were talking about giving the awards, and I just
Yeah.
thought maybe you could spend a little more time to tell us about how they're evaluated and why they would get an award to continue before the evaluation, or do they get feedback from the evaluation to incorporate in their grade?
Yeah, so they're basically evaluating every single year their progress towards their goal set. And we have a rubric both for implementation as well as for achievement in regards to reflecting not just internally to staff, but also to the public where they are in regards to achievement of their plans. At this time, many of them leverage the state assessment system to be able to inform those outcomes, because the outcomes have to be tied to student outcomes. So from that regard, we have been working with the LEAs. We're asking them to input the data that they have in regards to their progress thus far in May, but many of them need until the fall to be able to get the state data components to then be able to really finalize those student outcomes.
So that's SAGE data?
For many of them, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And they self-selected into what those items were going to be specific to their needs.
Oh, yay! Lisa did tell me she was going to be a little late, but we're grateful you're here because we now have a quorum.
I know, and I saw Carol out there talking to talking to superintendent, so I guess you can pass.
Anyway, we decided to start with number 3.4 because this is an information item from
Thank you.
Sarah.
Sorry
So go
about
ahead.
So with the shifts for evaluation, like I said, I think the big focus has been on that iterative process, making sure that LEAs, as they get into, a new system of really looking at a statewide grant, instead of, it being like, okay, here's your money, and, we wish you the best, and don't tell us what's going on for another couple of years, because we're waiting till the end. It's been great to be able to engage and interact with them, and also as we start to hear about those pockets of innovation, have the opportunity to then have a mechanism to share that with other LEAs for consideration. Last but not least, we are also working in regards to the next cohort. So at the next quarterly update, we do have an open application for digital teaching and learning at this time. The only applicants are going to be new applicants. So for those who are participating in the program currently and have board approved plans, they're not in a reapplication phase just yet, but we are encouraging new LEAs to come on. We have one district as well as a bunch of our charter schools that we are actively doing outreach to be able to encourage them to come and join the DTL community, which is my last kind of ending note in regards to the quarterly report. We had a charter school called the office letting us know that they were interested in applying for digital teaching and learning. And our implementation specialist, Todd Call, asked, so why? We're curious, what has, led you to this? And it was in talking to several of the other digital teaching and learning charter schools that they said, so it's really not about the money, and the plan is hard, and going through boot camp is challenging, but it's about being a part of the community after the fact, in regards to the site visits and the value that they've had in regards to some of the technical support and training they've received. So that was just a really positive kind of note, and that is how I was going to end my report today.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So give us a sort of an overview of who in Utah we've got involved. So this is done on an LEA basis.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think LEAs in Utah, I think we have a few gigantic LEAs that would encompass, huge numbers of students. And then we have other LEAs that are smaller, and then the charter LEAs that are even smaller. So how does that smattering play out across the state in terms of who's utilizing digital teaching and learning?
So we have 40 out of the 41 school districts who are participating.
Oh, who's not?
Because we're trying to convince them that this is their
that's what the district you're reaching out to.
Yes, who we're recruiting.
Okay, you don't need to tell us their name.
And then as far as our charter schools go, we have 32 currently. The 32 who are participating are going to be more of our larger charter school consortiums, because for a lot of our charter schools, when they were considering this opportunity, not just the first year, but the second year as well, it was really a cost-benefit analysis. So for many of our charter schools, because it's a qualified grant, so the formula funding comes out as per board rule, they were looking at completing a plan that is very comprehensive. On the low end, we're talking, kind of 50 to 60 pages of information, and really putting together a comprehensive vision for digital teaching and learning for a grand total of $8,000. And so kind of looking at work versus the outcome and the reward, many of the charter schools, I think, had to make the decision they did in regards to just recognizing that they often wear many hats and have a lot of different components on their plate. The positive in regards to the feedback we've been hearing from charter schools this year is because of the increased legislative funding. As those funds have increased, more of them feel that there's more balance in regards to the work requirements as well as the fiscal outcomes.
So you said that first off they were getting, they had to do a 40 to 50 page plan for $8,000. I actually heard about that, and I wasn't even on the board. Yeah. So now tell us about the increased funding and what they would be getting.
So right now, if you actually, and I could probably bring it up if you'd like to see it, but is that of interest, or I can email it to you.
I would like to see it. Would you folks like to see it?
Fine.
Sure. Okay, let me send it here.
Sorry, and I'm.
We should have been detail at the table.
I was caught in the hall, not caught, it's not, I was talking to Sid about that great thing she gets to do today.
No.
I think that is so flattering for her.
All right, so what I'm bringing up is actually our website. So Digital Teaching and Learning partners with the Utah Educational Network in regards to this program, them handling a lot of the infrastructure components as well as some of the training components as well. Just one moment. And on our website, we have the current application, which has been modified. We're really working on streamlining it to make it as clear and concise as possible. In addition to that, we also have the FY 2019 fiscal year projections available, and that's what I'm going to bring up for you. That particular item is something that's calculated with Jamie Barrett in MSP programs in our finance office. And the calculations are specific to showing what amount you would receive if every single LEA in the state participated. So let's see. I'm thinking about it.
It's so great when technology works and
There
when it doesn't work.
It just takes a second. So let me just show you, this is kind of our landing page with UEN, which is uen.org/digital-learning. You can see right here we have the full application that was released in May, and right underneath is where we include our funding projections. This is going to be some small print, so I'm going to try and blow it up just a little so you have a better vantage point. In the funding projections, we do clearly state that this is based on 100% participation from all eligible LEAs. In order to qualify for the funding, you have to have a grant that is, a plan approved by the State Board of Education to receive these funds. And that awards kind of the timeline for when that happens, which is actually late fall, so November, December, and that we do this grant based on reimbursement in regards to keeping track of qualified expenses. So then here you can see how the total allocation, $19,852,400, is then divided up in regards to charters and districts in the Utah State or Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. This formula follows the state board rule in regards to allocation for digital teaching and learning. Within that, then, as we go further down, I'm going to scroll a little bit over. That is where you can then see each of the districts. The districts actually receive a base as per board rule calculations, and then in addition to that, receive a percentage based on enrollment. So you can see that they have their total allocation over here on the right side of the screen. If I keep scrolling, we get to our charter school projections. Charter school, here I'm going to have to make this one a little bit smaller. The charter school projections, again, are going to be given a percentage based on their enrollment. The charter school total allocations tend to be the ones that swing the most, though. So because it's a qualified grant, what we do at the completion of the application cycle is we go back through and do a reallocation of all of the funds, specific to the districts as well as specific to the charter schools. So the charter school allocation, because we have so few who are participating, is then redivided amongst the charter schools who have approved plans. So in the first year of the application, for those that came through, they actually got if you looked at their original projected allocation, they got 2.5 times that. So even if they had started with a projection of 8,000, it ended up being significantly more in regards to helping them execute what their vision was for their plans. So along those lines, I think that that's also been a positive outcome for the charter schools who have been participating, and maybe why we're also starting to hear from some of the other charter schools that they'd be interested, just recognizing that. I mean, if you look at some of these allocations, let me find, there's one in particular that always stands out to me. They're not in alphabetical order, so I apologize. Okay, so Bear River Charter School, their projection right now is $4,905. And there is no tiered elements to the plan. You have to complete all the plan requirements that are articulated in our legislation.
And is a portion of the money allocated for administration so that it's funded here at the office? You have some money to support this?
Yep, great question. So we actually have a separate funding stream that is specific to administration of this program. So it's not taken out of the
It's
19.
not taken out. And does it amount to a percentage of the program or what?
Yeah, so originally when the program was initiated, it paid for 1 FTE, which was my original position. And then since that time, the last legislative session, or pardon me, not the last, the one in 2017, in that space they awarded 2 additional FTEs for implementation and evaluation support, recognizing that now that we have plans in place, we want to make sure that the LEAs are getting that support to be able to really have this vision come to fruition. And so when I'm talking about the professional learning communities, our implementation specialist, Todd Call, oversees that work and really helps to facilitate that. The evaluation side, we have an achievement specialist, which is Nathan Ock, and he works directly with the LEAs in regards to facilitating work with the evaluation as well as the formative feedback loop.
Yay. Okay, why don't we, while we've got you here, why don't we have you go ahead and address the action item, which is 3.5, the digital teaching and learning qualified grant. It looks like a rule that discusses the timeline for a reapplication.
Yep. So because we are moving forward with our original cohort, which actually does contain the majority of our awardees at this point, we wanted to make sure as a new program that we were checking in regards to what the reapplication timeframe was going to look like. So originally when this started, I think there was kind of an interest and an expectation that the application cycle continues every year, which it does. But as part of that, that means that we don't have awards going out until usually the spring. So this year it was January. January was when they received their official award letters for year 2. So most of our programs normally follow a school year continuum, and this one starts kind of in the middle of a school year, which does present some challenges in regards to implementation and being able to take your award and start doing something immediately in regards to your classrooms and things like that. So they usually use that for 6 months of the award in terms of planning, and then they launch whatever those implementations are going to be the following fall, just trying to align with teacher training schedules, as well as, not switching curricular aspects mid-year. So what I've done is presented a timeline for you. The timeline basically shows where we are in regards to implementation and proposes a date for starting a reapplication phase. So the conclusion of the 3 years. Board Member Cannon, you do bring up that the applications start in spring 2020 is before we would have those final year outcomes in regards to year 3. And that is a case recognizing the application process is generally recognizing the board meeting schedule as well, about 5 months. And so we're trying to be sensitive to not dropping LEAs off the program, but as well recognizing that we want to have those evaluative outcomes. So we're really here to present that this, after talking with our Digital Teaching and Learning Advisory Board, that this was kind of their recommendation, but also, we're very open to feedback and are looking for your guidance in regards to how to best handle that.
Thank you. So I've asked a lot of questions. I'm going to see if other board members, do you want to weigh in? You have questions for Sarah? Lisa?
I would like to see the grant application. Is it just restricted to what's in statute? Okay, or have we added additional requirements?
No.
So okay, so
Yeah.
you don't need to send it to me then. And I wasn't on standards and assessment when we were talking about this beginning of last year. And I remember hearing a little bit about the fact that a lot of districts were spending more money in essence to try to get the grant than they're actually receiving. And I'm just wondering what we've done to alleviate anything from that, like that from happening, if we have any way to do that given the statute and requirements in there.
So the statute's really robust, is the best way I can say it. It's also based on the Utah Master Plan, which is also a very robust document that was approved by both the State Board of Education as well as our policymakers. And so a lot of those key elements, so if I had to look at kind of how this came to be, which was before I was hired into this position, I think it makes sense that the master plan is as robust as it is because we as a community working with superintendents and our local leaders wanted to make sure when we're talking about digital teaching and learning that you recognize it has so many components to it. It is not putting a device in front of a child and saying, okay, good luck. But really you have to look at everything from not just what is your goal of that, but also what resources have you put to that, what type of training are you making available for your teachers, what type of technical support do you have in place, what type of data security and student data privacy measures have you taken, looking at your infrastructure, your fiscal rebuy plan, because devices don't last forever and we don't want you to, engage in a program that then ends, when your devices get too old. And so there's just a lot of components to that. We also, in wanting the plans to be sustainable in reference to the master plan, also have a component around doing a pre-assessment, working with your stakeholders to say, so what are our needs and what are our perceptions? Because, and we use free tools for that, but one of the components that often comes up is that we will have leaders who will say, oh, of course we're doing digital teaching and learning. But when they go and ask their teachers, like, are you using digital teaching and learning? They're like, I don't have access to, the devices that you're referencing. So making sure that that's really clarified before they start engaging in planning. As far as the application itself goes, we've worked very hard along with the Digital Teaching and Learning Advisory Board, bringing them back iterations. I think this year's is definitely our best one yet, being that it's an iteration. But in regards to that, let me see if I can bring up, just going to ask you to make a copy. If I had fewer tabs open, it's already open up here somewhere, but I just...
Yeah, my computer often looks like that, but not right now.
It's a little out of control. So one of the things that we have done, both to streamline the process for our LEAs as well as for the review as well, is that we basically have gone in and we are now doing recommended page lengths so that we don't have LEAs that feel like, I have to have have so much that's in there. So we've gone through and provided guidance to try and streamline that. In addition, we've broken it down into each of the required elements and then saying specifically what you need to include. So an example here would be in regards to the pre-assessment, what specifically do I have to include here so that it's very clear and they're not feeling ambiguity and therefore putting more things and more time and effort into it than is really required for this process. We've also, so I think another good update is that we're also leveraging tables where possible, so to be able to provide clear kind of organization in regards to the information that we're soliciting, so that they have a format to be able to easily put components into, as opposed to doing a lengthy narrative. In regards to that. The last thing I'd say that's a good update to the application is that it has coherence with then the expectations of the detailed dashboard and the evaluation component. So one of the pieces of feedback that we heard from our cohort 1 was that, they went through this whole planning process and then they realized, I need it in a slightly different format to be able to get it directly into the dashboard. We're asking for it in that format straight out so that as staff we can move those directly over without it being a revise and input.
Data input, yeah.
So,
go ahead.
So I'm wondering, are you seeing that same thing though now where it's costing more than they're receiving? Or because of different streamlines, or now that they're moving on to second years and they did all the initial work, that they're actually receiving grant money instead of just wasting resources?
As far as the plans themselves go, the LEAs that have approved plans, really the only interaction that they're doing with their plans is to be able to make updates and flesh it out in regards to year 2 to 3 implementation. So just saying like, okay, because in year 1, here's what I was going to do. Now that I'm in year 2, using the lessons learned from that, these are the minor tweaks I'm making. I'll also say for the second cohort that we worked with last year that came through, they had a marked advantage over the first year because we post all of the plans. And they're all public for every single one of the LEAs. So many of the LEAs that were coming through, they found other LEAs that were like them. And they said, oh, we share similar efforts with you, or we work together and we share a lot of the same mechanisms through our charter management company. And so rather than starting from scratch, are there elements that I can pull, from some of these existing plans and then be able to use that to help inform my plan, so that it's kind of like back to when I was in the classroom, having student examples made such a huge difference for kids. It's very similar here for our LEAs, having exemplars now that are out and available. The other thing that I'll show just in
Sorry, so do you know about the money, or
the money?
Like, so how much have they told you how much they're spending to receive the grant? So that's what I'm trying to find out, and I get all the streamline and all the other things that's happened, but I'm curious if we know the dollar figures like we knew in previous years, where districts are coming and saying they're spending more money to receive the grant than they're receiving. Do you know that, if that's still happening?
So I don't believe so, but I say that specific to a couple components. One is that many of the LEAs chose to use their grant money in regards to having personnel to be able to help execute this vision. And so they're not spending necessarily their base dollars. They're saying, well, great, if we're going to implement this vision for digital teaching and learning, we'd like to have some coaches who are really helping to facilitate and run this, I think, to Nebo School District, where that's where they've made that investment. The other component to it is many of the LEAs also are investing their own dollars, but in their plans. So they're not investing it in regards to the administration component, but Salt Lake City School District comes up in regards to the fact that their school board, when they saw their plan, recognizing the needs, said we will put forth over $1 million to help purchase devices to be able to help scale your plan. And so if we're not necessarily seeing that go towards, I have people who have to interact with state agency, but instead, no, we're putting that additional resource set into actual implementation in the field.
Okay, I'm going to turn some time to Patty.
So Board Member Ellis, one of the things in doing that, so I was actually in Davis School District and was writing the plan as we were doing it, and then was able to come on right when we were reviewing and doing the boot camps and whatnot. And most of the districts are saying that it costs more to get the plan because of the man hours in creating the plan itself. It wasn't really in the infrastructure or anything like that, because that's a part of getting the grant. It was actually just in the application and training process itself, which has been very streamlined. And since it's been so streamlined, and they have those rubrics and those exemplars and what it should look like and could look like, and being able to see those parameters, I think that now that is much more streamlined, and we're not really hearing that at all. Actually, it's more in a systems of support now that we're hearing, where they're saying, I didn't realize I could do this, or this, and now I can talk to this person or this person. So I think now we're not hearing that as much or at all that we heard in the very beginning, and it was more just about the application process, and then redoing, really trying to find what right looked like. And then once it's been found, it's much easier for that to be replicated.
Okay, so we've been working on this one for about half an hour now, and Sarah, you've been very kind to help us until we had a quorum of board members here. I'm going to seek a motion to approve the 3-year timeline, and then we're going to let Jennifer go ahead because she has to get to her graduation today. And she was first on our agenda.
Oh, never
So,
mind.
do you feel? Okay, so unless, if board members feel like, would you rather wait to act on Sarah's item, or do you feel okay about acting on Sarah's item now, which is approving the 3-year timeline for digital teaching and learning?
Well, I move that we approve the 3-year timeline for Cohort 1 of the Digital Teaching and Learning Grants awarded in March 2017.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I just want to finish the conversation that we were having. And anyways, I really appreciate that. And I'm concerned because I heard a lot of feedback from my own superintendents in the districts that they were spending more money than they were receiving, and what a frustrating process it was. And so that's what I want to make sure we are alleviating as best we can. And I understand statute, and I've been in the meetings and heard a million things about fidelity, but I don't want to, just for the sake of pushing something forward, continue to put a burden on the backs of our districts that's unnecessary in an effort to move something forward. And so I appreciate your comments, and that's all. I just wanted to be able to respond to them.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, which is to approve the 3-year timeline for cohort. That is the hardest word for me to say. Try that 3 times. Cohort. For Cohort 1 of the Digital Teaching and Learning Grants. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It appears unanimous. Thank you very much, Sarah. And we would like to bring Jennifer up. And we'll go back and begin with 3.1. Student reading proficiency. Notice to parents.
team for this. Jennifer Grimson, Pre-K-12 Literacy and Library Media Coordinator.
Sarah P. K-3 Literacy Specialist. And Allison Nicholson, Contract Policy Advisor.
Okay, well, have you go ahead, and I think the first thing we want to do is look at repealing R277-403.
You didn't coordinate very well. Do you want to tell I
coordinated, but
okay.
the reason we're asking for the 403 repeal is because in the past we've had R277-403 and R277-406 as separate rules, but really they're very much in conjunction with each other, and a lot of times LEAs will look at one and not the other, and then for their clarity, it's just better to have them together. So we did move into 406. The 403 moved into 406 for more clarity and ease of reading for our LEAs.
And then, as I understand it, they have reallocated the money for K3 reading, correct?
It's renewed.
Yes.
It continues to be an ongoing source.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I think they renamed it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, they
Yes.
renamed it.
Yes.
There's about 5 or 6 statutory sections that arguably are all about early literacy. So
Redoing this.
at least these 2 rules we're just bringing in.
Okay, Board Member Ellis?
I just am wondering which lines, and did you just completely move it in?
Yeah,
Or did you make changes?
we did both. So there were some things that were outdated or unnecessary. For instance, like they defined midpoint of the year, but then it was only used once, and it said the midpoint of the year is this date. So we just tried to kind of streamline it. And, yeah. So a lot of the new underlining that you see is 403, but it certainly is changes to 406 as well.
So it'll be a repeal of 403, and the next step we have to look at 406, which sort of incorporates what was in there and streamlines the process.
Yes. So when we look at kind of the big major changes, 403 did move into 406, and there weren't a ton of changes there because it was pretty basic. It was like the timelines for testing, that sort of thing. So the big changes were the timelines for their plan submission. Every year they hold on. I don't think they're ready. Do you want us to go into 406?
Well, let's go ahead and let's see if we can take action on the repeal of R277-403.
I move that the committee recommends the repeal of R277-403.
Thank you. Any more discussion to repealing that? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we'll move to 406, and you can tell us about how we've incorporated the K3 reading into early literacy, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the name change. So it was K3 reading, and now it is early literacy program. And so when we looked at the different changes, the big ones besides the moving of the one into the other were the timelines for for plan submission, the goals and the grade levels that are included in those goals, and then the systems of support. So rather than removing funding from LEAs that weren't doing very well, we are now turning that into a system of support that we can help them to improve instead of just take away money.
Oh, I like that so much.
I love that strategy so much.
So, and the precedent for this was SB 194 from this past session. So the rule changes are really due to the changes we were able to get in legislation for the board to then have a little more impact on LEA performance than to just withdraw funds.
What was the number of the bill again?
SB 194.
190.
Who sponsored that?
Senator Milner.
It's on board docs.
Okay. Oh.
Just so you know where all these changes are coming from.
Yeah,
I did look at it.
there it is. So, because we're board members and we care a lot about education in Utah, and I think we all know that how critical it is for kids to be successful in reading before grade 3. Jennifer, can you just tell us a little bit about where we are and where we hope to be as a result of this?
So currently 49% of our third graders read at grade level than the third grade, so about half. Definitely need to see some grand improvement in that area. third grade is highly predictive that if you don't make it there, then you're likely to continue to struggle. Our state data actually shows if you don't make it by the end of first grade, you're highly unlikely to make it by third grade. So we have to do some things in the early space for K-1 to really make sure kids are on the pathway to be successful by the end of third grade. In terms of some of the goals set in here, particularly we have a pathways goal, which is students come in at a certain level of performance, and the goal is to achieve at least typical or better progress towards their benchmark goal. And so previously the board had that set at 47.83, which seems like an odd number. It was. It was the nationally norm number that the board said, let's just go with that, because we didn't have historical data to work from. But now that we're a few years down the line, 60% is the target value that the legislation changed it to. We anticipate future changes potential at the board level. So right now, the way the rule is written is it says a minimum of 60%, which is what legislation requires. But at some point, we may come back to you in a few years and say, we're ready for 65%. We're ready for 70%. 60% is a good target right now because it has a number of LEAs that will still fail, but not so many that we can't handle the capacity of it. So if the 60% had been this past school year, we'd have 17 LEAs fail. I believe it was 3 or 4 school districts and another about a dozen, 13 charter schools would fail that we would need to support given the 60%. So we do anticipate a number of LEAs failing under this new, more rigorous goal. But we also anticipate, because of that rigor, more students will be getting the type of literacy instruction required, or at least supports to be able to help the LEA to make sure that that happens. So that's kind of one of the big changes. We can't continue on the path that we're on right now of having so many students unprepared to read. Literacy is definitely a kind of window to your future. It kind of helps you to be successful in social and kind of society as a whole. And so we're just want to be able to change that dynamic. And this bill and rule will really help to support the LEAs in focusing their efforts on a system of support for their students to achieve literacy outcomes at a higher level than we are at this point. Does that help?
Oh, that was really helpful. Thank you. Are there other questions, concerns from board members? Carol.
And I was reading this last night, and now I'm rethinking it, but in light of our desire to give LEAs as much flexibility as possible, but also help them see the value of this really important, it's not just a program. I mean, it's it's integral to children achieving in school. I'm looking on line 127, and 124 through 127. And it looks like if there's a plan that the local board submits and the superintendent doesn't approve it, or it doesn't, and I think that means it doesn't have the required elements. I guess it's possible that an LEA could negotiate or argue or just say, we like it the way it is. I don't know if that ever happens, but in that spirit, I think that that it should say the LEA may incorporate needed changes or provisions, because the LEA could just say, I don't agree with you, or let's talk about this more. Telling them if they have to incorporate needed changes doesn't, I don't think, captures the spirit of we'll work on this together with you. So small change, but is that okay?
So normally every year, when I'm reviewing them, the only reason I return them is because they're missing the required elements according to the legislation. And so by law, they have to have those included. And so that's why it's returned, because they didn't fill out every box or whatever it may be.
So, but could the LEA just say, we don't, kind of similar to what Elise was talking about a few minutes ago, could the LEA just say, this is too much work for us and we just don't want to do it?
If they don't want to receive their funds.
Yeah, then they don't.
Yeah, an application.
So we don't, at this time, no one does not complete the plan. We've been doing the plans for 10, 12 years now. So the plans are pretty much standard operating procedure. We do reject them for the things that Sarah described, and it's really coming down to a compliance thing, not so much that we dictate that you do it in a particular way, but that you have the elements present. The particular pieces that in 132 through 135 that we'll be looking for that are raising the rigor in what we expect from their plans are their goals. So they're now expected to have, it used to be a state goal only, now we have a state goal and 2 local goals. So one of the pieces is that they're ambitious and yet attainable. It's really easy to write a goal that you can make that is not ambitious. So we would like the opportunity to be able to push back if the goal seems inadequate, but to work with them in a collaborative way of saying, here's what your data has shown the last 3 years that you're able to do. This goal is well below that current practice. So being able to have those conversations, and then the evidence-based curriculum materials and practices. We have things going on in LEAs that are not evidence-based, would not be supporting of literacy outcomes, hence 50% of kids not achieving at grade level. So within that, we would like the support of the board to be able to have those conversations, to provoke some thought around what is evidence-based when it comes to literacy instruction. And I think if we just say nay, I worry that we won't have the ability. And maybe if we reject one and they want to push back, there's a procedure that we need to put in place that the board then gets engaged. We haven't had that problem in the past, but we also haven't had the ability to say what you're doing in your plan is not evidence-based. So, for example, 30 minutes of literacy instruction in a school setting for K through 5th graders is not adequate. I can give you lots of reasons that says 30 minutes is not sufficient.
And I totally know you guys
Does
are
that
doing.
make sense?
Yeah, I know. I absolutely know what you're doing.
I don't know what the
you know what you're doing. And it sounds like you're pretty insistent on the shall. It feels like that the LEA could say, no, I don't necessarily agree with you. I'd like to talk about it. And May feels a little more collaborative to me.
Yeah,
but
I
understand that they have to. I understand that they have to meet the elements of the statute, and those are well outlined and well articulated. It just struck me as sort of an odd directive there. So I'll defer. If you think shall say there, I can live with that. It seemed kind of heavy-handed to me.
It's my preference, but you are the board.
Well, I think it shall, because they have to do these things or else it's not good literacy instruction. And, shall means they have to do it so they get the money.
And there's certainly not only one good way.
Right, of course.
There's a lot of great ways, and
yeah.
A lot of our LEAs are doing really amazing things.
Mm-hmm. I'm fine.
Okay. Other questions or concerns from board members?
Something that I think you might be interested in that is new is it does allow an LEA to submit it early for pre-approval and work out any of those kinks and extra time. So they're offering their expertise early on before you even take it to your local board. You can bring it to us, and that will speed up that process later on, so that by the time it's due in October, you're not caught by surprise. And so that's a nice offer by the staff to help them, get that up front.
And that was not in place in the past.
And this year we're actually holding trainings for LEAs that want to come to learn how to do this new early literacy plan with the goals, because the goals are new for them. So there'll be some support this year, and we'll continue that support on an optional basis moving forward, so that if they need more coaching and support and development of their plans, they'll have that supported. And we have 105 LEAs signed up so far, I think. Is that about right?
I think it's 107.
Oh, we get a few more every day.
Yep.
We have about 122 probably.
There's one sitting in my inbox right now.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay,
take.
so I want to bring up one thing. I think I was on the board when we got K3 reading, and Governor Olin Walker fell on her sword to get that for us. And one of the things that was just so distressing to me was that we got that money, we could help kids with reading, and as our kids grew, the money didn't grow with it. And so the ability for that money to do good, to help all the kids of Utah was greatly diminished, and we didn't get the result that we were hoping for. So Jennifer, do you want to tell us what you guys have thought about now we've incorporated this money into a new program, how are we going to keep doing good for kids?
So one of the things that we'd like to do that we'll be bringing a business case to the board in the next few months is to ask for at least growth for this program. It has not seen growth ever, and so we are having less dollars per student over the years. As we bring on more schools, we have more student enrollment, those pieces, so we'd like to bring a business case. The difficulty with this program is it is not well perceived by the legislature. It has not had the impact that they were hoping for. We still have a large percentage of students not reading at grade level. We're excited about the new bill because it puts a lot more rigor into the system. We have good results. When kids get intervention, they're 7 times more likely to become proficient readers if they needed intervention. So the services LEAs are providing are working, but we're not changing significantly the population that are readers. And so that's something, as we have more rigorous goals, more systematic focus on literacy. In the past, our LEAs, our literacy directors have really been the lead. It's hard to change a systems approach when you have one person that kind of leads all of the work. So the literacy training this summer is actually a team from their LEA that represents their system. So it has maybe a kind of equity person, whether that's their Title I or their ELL person coming. It has a superintendent or assistant superintendent engaging, and other professionals in their LEA that makes sense to really represent their system so that they can bring all their expertise and their work together to accomplish these goals. Because it's not going to be sufficient for the literacy director to be like, here's our goals, I hope we get to them. But we need the system to really work with them. So principal supervisors are engaged in the teams because then they can go support the principals, because really where does the work happen? At the school level. It's not a district thing that can be accomplished without the schools really engaging in the work. So we anticipate with some of the changes we're making to be able to have a better case moving forward of the impact of this early literacy program, aka K-3 reading improvement, to kind of change that perception that has been built. The legislature, you guys have asked for a couple of years now from the board for some increases to K-3, but it continues to be not funded because of that perception. So we've got some work to do around kind of the publicity of this program. But hopefully some of the measures being put in place will help with that.
Other questions, input from board members? Then what they are asking for us is to approve R277-406. Is that the right one? Okay.
I know, right? You can see what our LEA's got.
As amended and for continuation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll place that motion. Is there any further discussion? Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're good. Then Jennifer, tell us what your dissertation was on.
It was on the impact of preschool on kindergarten readiness. So
what did you find out?
Oh, just
you won't
a few words.
So I did 3 different research questions. So one was on kids who went to preschool versus kids that didn't. Now know that our data is not super clean in preschool, so how accurate our results are what they are. Kids who didn't go to preschool outperform kids who did. So that's what worries them.
Kids who didn't go?
The second question was around what type of preschool, whether they went face-to-face or in our online program like Upstart or both. It depended on the population. Some of our ELs did better in face-to-face programs than online, but a lot of our special ed students with low-income families, they did better in the online environment, and then kids who only had online did better than online and face-to-face, so Upstart is working. It reconfirms the Upstart. So.
Wow. Were you looking at private data or just data you have in the
public LEA?
sector?
So we don't have private.
So you don't know about any people that are using private first?
There's so many issues with the data. Like the limitations in my dissertation are numerous. And then the last one was quality preschool versus undetermined quality. And there was a little benefit for some groups like special ed did better in quality programs than not quality programs. And not saying they're not quality, they just haven't been deemed quality at this time. So it was very interesting, but the data is so vague and not complete that it's really you're pulling in kids who potentially went to preschool, but our system says they didn't because they were in a private provider. And so until our data gets clean, it's really hard to give any accurate data on preschool programs in Utah because we don't track that data here. K-12 is kind of the system where we can say you went to school. I mean, preschool programs, some are 2 hours, 2 days a week. Some are every day, all day. Some are once a week. And so, and whether the kid attended or not, we have no idea.
Yeah.
They were enrolled, but we don't know how many days they actually showed up. So there's a lot of gaps in the data in our preschool programs. So as we continue to try and say preschool works or doesn't work, we have to clean up the data first.
I can see a big
That's
chapter
what I learned.
in the dissertation. We need to clean up the
Yeah.
data.
It's in my recommendations for the board.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for bringing this to us, and we really want to see some improvement in the.
We're excited for what this could cause.
Yeah.
We're hoping with the support we'll give and the system of support that will be available for LEAs that do fail, we'll have the right tools and to support them in improvement. So, thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day today.
Thank you.
Okay. Troy Nordic has been waiting patiently. Troy, we'll bring you up now. So we have heard from Troy a couple of times previously about driver's education, and he's brought standards to us, and we've looked at rules, and now we have the driver education law and policy manual to look at. So with that introduction, Troy, we'll turn it to you.
Good. Well, again, Troy Nordic with Driver Education. Thanks for taking time to meet with me. I'm just going to talk about this law and policy revision manual that we kind of put together to present to you guys. In March, the board approved the continuation of Rule 277-746, which incorporates this law and policy manual as administration for driver education. In the manual, it contains like driver's license division rules, legislative codes, and then all board rule that governs driver education. So we have made a couple revisions to a few of the rules that were in here. I shouldn't say rules, but a few of the
guidelines.
Yeah.
Can we just ask which one of these you're looking at?
It's, so the 2012 is the old one, and then you'll see one that says crosswalk.
Okay.
That crosswalk is what I'm going to talk about, just the
Thank
changes.
you. I just wanted to make sure.
And then the new one is the last one. So just a couple changes that maybe I just need to make you guys aware of. We've tried to make these more convenient for LEAs. We've done a lot of compliance visits, and we noticed these rural schools were having a hard time really staying compliant with some of the rules that were in the old law and policy manual. So what we've done is we've tried to remove some of the shalls and then inserted recommendations. So we're still following the driver's license division governing rules, but letting the LEAs kind of determine what works best for their situation. So I'm happy to take any questions or concerns or anything about this.
Okay, so make the point that you made to me about how we oversee the classroom portion.
Correct.
Of driver's ed.
Yep. You guys govern all of the classroom standards, which were just approved a few months ago. And really you can govern the hours that the kids are in the classroom portion. We actually do it a little different than the driver's license division. We require kids to be in the classroom 27 hours, and the driver's license division, if they took a driver's ed course privately, they only have to be in there 18 hours. We believe the reason was, and I wasn't around when they made that rule, but I believe because we offer credit for driver ed. It's just an elective credit.
Janet?
Yes.
How does this work for the online, students that take it online through the school?
So online program, the state has a standard program that is on UEN, Canvas, and any district can utilize it if they want. The online program, they actually have to justify 30 hours.
Okay.
And that is actually similar to the DLD.
Okay. But these crosswalk changes, are they going to be reflected in the online program as well as the classroom?
Yeah, most of the changes are actually with the behind the wheel.
Yeah. Okay.
And the behind the wheel section is just so you guys know, any public school that offers driver's ed, they have to drive them 6 hours.
Yeah.
But within that 6 hours, there's a lot of different ways they can accomplish it, whether they use simulators or do ranges or things like that. And so we're still following the 6-hour guideline, but letting them design their own program around it.
Okay, so, and these are kids, so it seems like they don't have a lot of driving time at school, but they are now getting that learner's permit that gives them
Yes.
as much time as they need in a,
And
how long a time period?
so that's when the legislator passed the graduated driver's licensing laws, that's when that 40-hour restriction came in, which is awesome. I think when we talked standards, you saw the reduction of fatalities,
yes,
which was huge. And so it's kind of a weird process how they get their license, but students, they get their permit at 15. They usually do that before they take the actual driver's education class. So they'll go in and get their permit, and the reason is that they want kids driving with their parents. And that's, data shows that's where kids are going to learn the most as far as safe driving habits. Sort of. Driving with, right, Sarah?
Their parents, why you're with me.
But anyway, so they come to us with a lot of experience already, and then the driver ed instructors try to refine any bad habits they've learned from parents, and so really we only get them for a small portion of their 40 hours, that's 6 hours. A lot of schools have taken driver's ed out of the school day, and they do it before or after hours, and they still set up a good program, and kids are learning. Again, it's just to refine their skills and help them, increase that safety on the road. So.
Well, back in the olden days when my kids were taking the old way, where you took driver's ed and then you got your license, one of my children had 3 accidents in the first week.
Oh.
So I really...
This is a better way.
This is a much better way. I endorse this way.
I have a question, and I'm more asking if you had any discussion about this, because I'm just kind of caught my attention in the manual. The way fees are charged for driver's ed. I know because that's going to be a very immediate discussion in a month or two. And you've gotten something now memorialized in your manual. So I just want to say, first of all, did you have much discussion about that? Or any discussion about it?
Yes.
You actually did. Huh, that kind of surprises me. And what you've got here is pretty benign. I mean, it's kind of vanilla, doesn't it? It says that LEA can charge students, and that LEA can charge students for makeup sessions, but it doesn't really get to out-of-district students or online students, or if they're charged differently, or any of that stuff. Or, if there would be fee waivers for... So I'm just sort of, can you summarize maybe what you've learned and what the direction is to
Yeah, so in code,
The directors for
the LEA can determine a reasonable amount of fee.
Uh-huh.
So for driver's ed, there's actually two forms of reimbursement.
Mhm.
The state, so when a kid completes the classroom portion, whether it's brick and mortar or online, they submit a reimbursement form, they being the districts.
Mhm.
So they collect all their numbers and they submit it to us, and they get reimbursed from the state allocated or
From liquor
legislative
tax,
money,
isn't it?
$30, yeah, from it's the actual automobile tax account.
Oh.
Is what it comes from. And so we send them back $30 for their classroom portion. When they complete the behind the wheel portion, we send the districts back $70.
Uh-huh.
So for a student that completes the entire driver ed course, the two different phases, they'll get a $100 reimbursement.
Uh-huh.
That goes to the districts, and then the districts charge whatever fee they determine is a reasonable amount. And actually in code it says reasonable amount.
Uh-huh.
If a kid is on a fee waiver, they submit that with a reimbursement form, and then out of that tax account, the state pays for the fee waivered students.
Oh, pays for the fee waiver amount in addition to.
Plus the $100 reimbursement, yeah.
Huh.
So districts won't lose money for fee waivered kids. The problem that we're seeing, the fee waivers, you might be in one district and they charge $75, and then you might be in another district and they charge $160. So there was a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
And we're really wondering why, but
Yeah.
the more you look into it, if they offer the class during the school day, they can actually take the money from FTE. So an FTE can pay for the instructor. If it's outside of the school day, it has to be funded solely through fees. So that's that's really the biggest discrepancy.
It's kind of a policy decision at the
Yeah,
LEA
yeah.
board level. So are you finding the same, is there still contention about LEAs accepting students from homeschool students or students from other districts or from charter schools that don't offer driver's ed? Is that still something that's a problem?
A little bit. It's actually in code. So there's a code that states any student that's private, public, or homeschooled can take driver's ed at their school boundary
If there's
if
space
their
available.
school's not offering the program.
And if there's space available, isn't it?
It doesn't say if there's space, it just says they have the opportunity to do it.
Okay.
What's happened is some of the schools read the extracurricular fee, and so when a student comes from a charter school, that school could basically bill the charter school the $75 extracurricular fee for driver's ed. So I think that's probably some of the concern.
And is that still is that happening? in
Some very few districts do it because it's just that it's a self-sufficient program, so it's really not affecting them very much.
Okay. Sounds to me like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like from your perspective, the fee, aside from the fact that that's even explainable, the fact that there's one charge in one district, different charge in another district. But it sounds like you don't think that there are real strong fee issues about driver's ed anymore.
I think there's concerns because there was a lot of, I guess the best word is just ignorance. They just didn't know why. And so they see that big discrepancy. Another reason, I guess, if schools are driving them all 6 hours, the district is paying an hourly rate and the teacher's salary rate or whatever they have worked out. If they do a range, it actually saves the district money because now you have a big group of kids. So you're only paying one teacher for a lot of kids to count up that 6 hours versus the actual individual,
But
teacher
even then,
discrimination.
whether you have a range or not is sort of a local decision, and maybe, I mean, districts with more literal property could have a range more easily than some of the urban districts.
Yeah, and a lot of the larger districts, they just have a hard time getting all of their students through in time. Rural schools, ranges they don't make a lot of sense for them. So they drive, usually it's rural schools that are driving all 6 hours. Larger districts all have ranges that we found.
Helpful, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, board members? Okay, then what we're looking for is approval of the driver education law and policy manual that is incorporated into R277-46.
And incorporated by reference, did it say that in the rule? I didn't. It's supposed to be-
It says it in the rule.
It's supposed to be incorporated. I move that we adopt, approve, recommend to the board the acceptance of the driver education law and policy manual as incorporated in R277-746.
Thank you, Carol. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you, Board Member Cannon.
I just wanted to take a second and talk about naming convention. At the April board meeting, board member Spencer Stokes asked that we look at naming convention within each of these areas. It wasn't a directive, but it was an idea. Naming conventions within each of the areas. So if you look right now at 3.3 on board docs, this is something that we're trying in just here in Standards Committee. And Sherry's one who is making sure that this works appropriately. So if you notice within every document that's uploaded now, this was item 3.3. Oh, yeah. And then the naming convention within is 3.3A, B, and C. So as they're referencing it, we don't have to say it's the one that looks like or whatever. It's 3.3A, it's 3.3B. And so Sherry's making sure that as they're doing it, that it's uploaded and we can then all be on the exact same one instead of, but we're just trying that out in here. So if you have any feedback for the larger group, then let us know.
I think it's great, but he didn't know that.
Right, so we
didn't know that.
Yes,
right?
and so now that's why when he said that, I wanted to make sure this was our first time trying it out to see if it works, but let us know as we're moving forward if that's appropriate or not, or
I
like it in other areas.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
We'll like working with that. Things easier. All right, it looks like we are now to an information item that is 3.6, health standards, and Jody Kaufman is joining us. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you. I'm Jody Kaufman. I'm the health education specialist here at the State Board of Education, and I'm just here to give you an update on the standards writing committee and what work they have so far done. Just want me to
Please, just
jump
go
in?
ahead.
Okay.
I think you've had several meetings, right?
So we had one large meeting that went over the revision process. It went over current laws and policies in health education, as well as the new laws that were just passed in the 2018 legislative session. We went over core standards. We went over some samples so that this committee could see the formatting, where we're going. Our current health standards are in standard objective indicator format, and the new standards are all doing strands and standards. So we went over kind of that new. We spent a lot of time talking about the report from the review committee, and we also talked about feedback that's been given from the board, stakeholders, curriculum directors, so just different groups that I've asked for feedback on what they would like to see, what direction, not direction, that's a bad word, just which items we should spend maybe more time focusing on, or if there's things that are just outdated. For example, food pyramid, right? That's come up everywhere. Why are we still teaching the food pyramid? There isn't a food pyramid. So things like that, right? So I have a document that I gave to the writing committee and let them just see the feedback so that they would kind of have that information as they do their work. And then they broke into 6 subcommittees based off of their individual areas of expertise. For example, we have a suicide prevention specialist. She'll be working on groups with mental health, right? So that's her area of expertise. We have a chair from the College of Health at the University of Utah. She's working on nutrition. And that's her area of expertise. So each group has 6 to 8 members. Some people are doubled up into groups, but the way that they broke into, and this doesn't necessarily mean that this is what the strands are going to be, this is just the way they're working to put developmentally appropriate standards into each grade level. And then the whole committee will come back and really kind of decide what the strand names will be and what goes under each strand. But they broke into emotional mental health, human development, substance abuse prevention, safety disease prevention, protective factors, and nutrition. So then as each group, they each met once in April. And then we have May dates as well. Today, actually, we're meeting with substance abuse prevention and safety and disease prevention. They are meeting this afternoon. Emotional mental health will meet next Monday. Nutrition will meet on Tuesday. And then May 21st, human development will meet again.
Would you tell me, because I didn't quite catch it, so is emotional and mental health where you're having the specialist come and help with suicide prevention?
Correct. Yeah, our suicide, we actually have 3 different people, and they're actually working in protective factors and emotional mental health.
Okay. Yes, Lisa.
So I don't know that we made the specific request for health provisions, but we've kind of been talking as a whole about ways to help the board feel more involved in the process. And one of the ways was letting board members know when meetings were and possibly recording them so that they're available for us to listen or watch. Has that been happening?
So I have been sending out the dates in advance.
Right.
Yeah. So
but you're not recording them for later.
Right. So we recorded our first large meeting, and because of how much, I guess, discussion is going on, and then how some of it is they're working on their computers more than. So I can absolutely give summaries of each meeting. That is absolutely available. But the recording, it was kind of problematic for the actual working of it because it's so much typing and moving and people talking over each other.
It wasn't very.
Yeah, it's not very helpful.
Okay.
But I can absolutely create a summary sheet of each meeting. That's really easy.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
And I had a different question that I actually sent to Diana late last night. Bless her heart, she had an answer for me this morning. But I want, and this may sound kind of strange, and her response was helpful too, but I wanted to just sit in on a couple of those writing committee meetings, and I would promise not to say anything. I just wanted to observe, because sometimes then later, weeks, months later, when the board discusses how these how the standards were developed and came about, I would like to know personally, from a board member, what expertise and how the expertise was discussed. And I don't have the time or interest, or would not torture you with being at every meeting, but I would just like to attend a couple so that I could assure myself that experts are doing this and they are actively participating with parents and with others to develop these in a consensus type fashion. It's not just some quote expert in a room by himself and then these people on a committee that are in name only. And I would like to be able to publicly say, I observed this and it was a very healthy and involved process. And that's why I would like to do it. And Diana said, well, you probably would be bored, and I probably would, but I also, or maybe not. I love hearing people discuss stuff and write stuff. So I would just like to attend a couple of, so letting us know when the meetings are. like, again, just a couple of times to be able to see the
And
interaction.
I also responded to that
Oh, bless you.
as well
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank
So I
you.
gave you the complete list
That's
of the
helpful.
members, along with their contacts. You can see what school they teach for, or which district they're involved in. We have a couple district specialists, or you can see what agency they work for, American Heart Association, Department of Health, Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health.
I personally believe that this is happening in the most collaborative, excellent, professional way. I just want to be able to know that so that I can say that in public when we have concerns and discussion.
Right, and you are, then also in the email.
Thank you.
Anyone
Jody,
is
could
more
you
than
send
welcome
that to all of us?
Yeah, send that to all
Yeah.
of us.
What would be and you individually, just this committee?
I asked
How do you
the
want me to
committee
send
members.
it?
Yeah, I would like that
And then
too,
I asked to know what dates they were, the different writing committees were meeting.
Right, and that one I have been sending out
I
the
did get that
individual meeting dates. I've been sending those.
To Lorraine to disseminate. And that's how we've been asked to communicate with board members.
Are they coming from you?
If it goes to the whole board, is to send it to Lorraine and then have Lorraine disseminate it to the full board.
Okay.
And so I can do the list, the email that I responded.
Yeah, but
The email I responded to Carol this morning, I'm happy to send back through Lorraine to put to give to all
so
of you.
it gives us all the committee members, you know, and then if you be willing to send the little summaries,
Absolutely, yep, I can work on
that'd
that.
be great.
Can we get some more clarification on the summary part? Would you like those to be all put together once a month after all of the committees are complete? Or is that just after each one's done? Do you have any sort of a way of doing that?
Jody, which would be easier for you?
Yeah.
Probably one whole summary would be simpler.
Let's do one whole summary. Oh, Diana, please.
Well, I just wanted to remind Jody to maybe let the board know about this afternoon's elements since they're all right here and it might be convenient.
And she had told us that.
Okay, I missed that.
That's okay. Yeah.
Just to give credit to your.
Yes. So from where substance abuse prevention is meeting first, room 248. And then the safety and disease prevention is meeting in 241.
And what time is?
12 to 4 for substance abuse prevention and 1 to 5 for disease safety and disease prevention.
Okay.
So I'll be bouncing to facilitate each.
Is that in the email?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I have the which room and the dates of each, but I can resend that one today as well, so that you have kind of an updated of which room and it's easier to find. That I can easily do that for you.
Jody, thanks so much. And thank you for taking extra time to involve us in the process and update us. Appreciate that.
And I'll keep sending updates and presenting as things move along.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Is Ricky Scott?
I do not.
Okay, we're going to give you some time at the table.
Wow. Yeah.
He is here to talk to us today about an action item for the U-Star programs.
Maybe I'll just.
Go ahead, Allison.
So, Allison Nicholson, Contract Policy Advisor, and this one was assigned to me because it was up for its 5-year review for continuation or repeal. And so I worked with Ricky and he said, yes, it continues to be necessary. This one was pretty old, it hadn't been looked at in 5 years, so we made quite a lot of technical updates and a little bit for clarity in language. But so that's what this is a continuation and technical update. So we've tried not to make any substantive changes. Progressive. Does that sound correct?
Okay. Ricky, will you give us just a little background on U-Star and particularly how U-Star relates to K-12 education?
Absolutely. So Ricky Scott, K-12 Science Specialist, teaching and learning
USTAR started back in 2009. It was a legislative allocation ongoing. Started back then specifically to help LEAs retain and entice science and math specialists into the teaching field. They, at the same time doing that, the other intent was to also provide more opportunities for students in the world of math and science opportunities. So specifically, USTAR has been used, so I say K-12, I mean, it's K-12 world, but it's really for secondary teachers. So it's those with a math or science endorsement, secondary math or science endorsement, so grades 7 through 12. Again, every year we have multiple districts and charters that have participated in this. We have currently 26 districts and 24 charters that participate in the USTAR program.
Do I remember, Janet? Do I remember, was this one of the programs that legislators were thinking about cutting, or
Yes, but no. So yeah, so there are two programs up on the Hill that have the name of USTAR. One's more for higher ed, for entrepreneurship, things like that. That's the one the legislators talked about cutting. This passed the initial budget that EdApro passed back in early legislative session. So this went right through, no question.
This is the good and enduring one, as opposed to one that might go away. It's
confusing.
The same name.
Well, exactly.
Different intent.
It's a pretty catchy name. I mean, I can see why it's popular. So I get it. Okay, thank you.
So this involves $6.2 million that's given out in competitive 3-year grants, and it's specifically for math and science teachers, and they use it for either providing an extended contract year or other things like that. They do extra to get it.
Correct.
And they can get this addition to their pay, and they also can get the teacher's salary supplement.
Right, so this is in addition to the teacher's salary supplement.
Okay. Any more questions from board members?
I have one little technical thing that just was, was looking at, and it caught me funny, and I think it's just anyway, line 47. Don't you want to say something like the grant program created in section 53F?
Yes, thank you.
I know, dumb, but
Not dumb. Beautiful.
Autistic.
I have experience with this.
Oh, a little bit. Perseveration is probably a better word.
Yes.
I move that we recommend to the board that this rule R277-492 be approved. Do we pass it on first reading?
Be approved as amended.
As amended.
Okay, and continued.
Very minor, like, yes, and continued.
And continued. Okay, thank you. Are any more questions for Ricky? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That leaves us with the school grading system. Okay.
I like this so much better.
Are we looking for Anne, Michelle, and Dana?
So contained.
I know.
Patty, the attachments aren't numbered that way on this one.
On this one, they are not?
No.
Okay.
No, because they're rules that except for the last one that I didn't put in.
Would you like us to continue to do that as well, even if they are rules, so that we can just?
Well, just wherever then we know what to open.
Okay,
so
so
3.3A.
Okay. We can do that on every
I
snip.
tried to make the descriptions.
No, the description's good, but
Yeah, but
we
then
just
we
had some issues.
Then we can just open up A, B, C, and then.
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
And then if we can't read, but we know our letters.
Well, but we know our letter. It's true, it's just easier.
Yeah, don't go too far beyond C.
It really hasn't been that much of a problem. It's Most more the contracts where it was like contract
Yes.
one, you know.
And sometimes in here it gets very will-y too, so we just have to, we'll see if it works and if you guys like that, and then you can.
I think I like the idea a lot, so we'll see.
Okay.
Okay, so Darren and Michelle are back with us. We have a rule to look at, draft 2. As you'll remember, we looked at this rule last time, and we looked at the great visuals they had with it and asked them if they could rewrite this rule for us, incorporate some things that we asked them to incorporate, and they have been working on it and have come back to us with things we've asked them for, so we'll let them present that to us.
Okay, thanks. I don't know, Allison or Amish, one of you two probably should lead that.
kind of
You
the
did the work on it.
So you'll remember last time we incorporated by reference a document, and that that I think caused more confusion and it was unnecessary confusion. So we really looked back at what we were incorporating and said, what do we need to be clear about in rule? And so you'll see on this draft 2, starting on page 4. So starting on page 4 at line 120, this was the amendment that you all approved last time where we wanted to call out the sections of the law where those indicators were described, so everybody knows where those come from. And then on line 149 of draft 2, that was where we had incorporated the policy supplement. So we just decided to take that out. That seemed consistent with your direction in the discussion. So we took that out, and then much of the blue text you'll see is just the actual provisions and language, so we brought that in. So in 166, before we had said the methodology for indexing growth points is in the supplement. Now, starting on line 166, we show you the indexing for points of calculating academic growth. They don't have to go to a separate document, it's right there. So that has the...
I'm a big fan of that.
Okay, so that has the student growth percentile and the student growth target, and then we tell how you weight those in relation to each other, how the student has scored on that. And then starting in the next section of the rule on line 192, you can see in red, we took out where it was referring to the technical manual, or the policy supplement, and then we put it in. So again, on not lines 193 to 195, that was the reference to indexing for growth. And then on lines 202 and beyond, we used to say that we were going to publish how you would define what adequate progress for ELL students would be. Now we just say it's right here. They need to have an increase in their proficiency level of 0.4 on the WIDA. And then on line, trying to correct it. Then on line 224, we didn't want to lose any of that transparency. So in line 224, you are directing the superintendent to publish the full accountability technical manual, which I'm guessing is a few hundred pages or something. And it has the business rules, the technical details. This is what we include in the numerator. This is what we include in the denominator, how, all the methodology. And that's for that transparency for anyone who's interested to go and see that. So I think those are that's the way we structured the rule.
So based on our last meeting, I feel that I heard two major messages. One was the desire to have specific details contained within the rules so that they are clear and carry the force of law. Things like the indexing of points, the percentages for school grades. The policy supplement also also seemed to not have a clear audience. And so that was the other takeaway that I heard from you, is that what is the audience for these various things? And the policy supplement really only served the purpose of fulfilling the requirements of the rule, but a lot of it was restating what is in statute and what is in rule. So we decided to just remove it entirely and move the technical detail to the technical manual where it's useful to the field. The other thing is that what is useful to the field in interpreting the accountability system. So in board docs, you'll see a document that we've called Accountability Communication Tools. And that's where you'll see the graphic with the pie charts and the brief descriptions. If you scroll down, you'll see the school grades handout that we use to communicate what those thresholds are, and then the example self-reported indicators that we showed you last time. But these are the kinds of communication tools that we provide to the field to make all of this accessible for educators.
That's great. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Very well done. It is. It's just, I love it.
I think we tried to.
I can't wait to show all my teachers. I'm sure they'll be thrilled. Look, everyone.
I think we've tried to meet your requests and make this more accessible and streamlined rather than complicated unnecessarily.
It's just clean and clear.
I'll just point out quickly on that first page with the pie charts, we added a little tagline that tells you, the reader, these come from Title 53E 25, so those come from the code. The next page.
Oh, tell me, so I missed that. Tell me that again.
Okay, so on the communication tool, the pie chart, in the bottom right-hand corner of the first page, it just gives a little reference that comes from Title 53E Chapter 5. So the reader can see those are statutory requirements.
Okay.
And then the second page that has Utah State Board of Education at the top, those are things that, I mean, the main information there is the cut scores, right? And that tells you in the bottom right corner that comes from the administrative rule.
From the rule.
It is very well done.
I'm thrilled about it.
Thank you. Great. We aim to see.
Okay, Patty.
Thank you, Chair Cannon. One of the things that in this, it was a very robust discussion that we are going to be bringing back to the Eliminating Barriers Task Force.
Good,
and we are on the agenda, is what I've been told. Is that right? We're on the agenda for having that
next week.
Yep. And so with that, really talking about the difference between the guidance documents, technical assistance, and what should be incorporated in rule and what is in statute and the intended audiences. So there is actually some additional work that's been done and some samples and exemplars to be able to bring to the Eliminating Task Force.
This would be a great exemplar.
To be able to then have further discussion on what that looks like in moving forward.
Okay. Questions, concerns from board members?
No, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to incorporate everything that we brought to you, and anyways, you did a great job. So I'm sure that there's minor errors that someone will find, but overall, it's just such an improvement. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we all feel that way. That this is a job well done. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. They are looking for us to approve amendments to R277-497 Draft 2 on first reading. Anyone care to make that motion?
I move that we approve the amendments to R277-497 Draft 2 on first reading and forward a positive recommendation to the full board.
Great. Okay. Any further discussion?
Just make a comment. So you rightly complimented these two for their good work, but I think it's important to note this process is an example of the role that you as board members say in helping your employees to be able to produce quality work. You know, that we bring the first draft and the way that you're able to provide really specific direction to us to be able to make changes. Just increases the quality of the product that comes out of this agency. So we're grateful for the energy and time you put into these. After watching yesterday, it'd be so easy just to get exhausted and let things kind of go. But your attention to the details are really helpful for your staff.
Thank you.
Do we have a Carol draft?
Is there a page of amendment?
Is there a Lear amendment?
We love them. I think I should have a life, right?
Okay. Again, all in favor of Jenny's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for your direction.
We went care what I
I'm so sorry. I just, we've been told answer.
That's all we have, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's us. So I will make a motion to adjourn.
Short, we are in favor.
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
I want to grab them all. I have them next to me.
I figure out why.
That was good, yes.
You know what? It helps.